Hey guys, welcome to the Winning Move podcast. We have another awesome guest on today, Peter. Is it McKernan?
McKernan. Yeah, you got it on
All right,
point.
I got it right. And then I was like, bro, I didn't even know you were a firefighter.
Yeah,
I had no idea. I don't know how I didn't. Maybe I spaced out or something, but that's impressive, dude.
well, thanks, dude.
Tell us about you. Let's start with the same thing we always do: how you got into real estate, and then we'll eventually get to what your business looks like now. But I mean, what you are currently doing as a firefighter is impressive, bro.
Thanks, man. Well, thanks for having me on, first and foremost. I know we've been going back and forth. You were on my podcast, so it's been cool just seeing like what you've done, what you do, and all that. So I'm glad to be here and chat with you.
Hell yeah. Thanks for coming on, man.
So got my license. I was 28 and grabbed my license because ultimately I got hired full time as a fireman. Got bored as I was a fireman, was like, hey, I should just get my degree. Got my degree from Long Beach State, and then got my license when I was 28, about a year and a half after I bought a couple rentals in California. I'm still in California and focus on rentals in California, but I got my license after a couple of transactions because I was like, dude, I'll save some money. I'll be able to, use that money towards other rentals and stuff like that. And where that really flourished was helping out just regular friends and family, guys I work with. And then I kind of just started focusing on that business, growing that business, and put a lot of time and effort into growing just the residential real estate agent side of things while I was still looking for some deals and stuff like that. And today, running a team, got one buyer's agent, got a full-time assistant, doing 25 to 30 transactions a year. And so working full-time, and then I do some, advertising and stuff like that, radio ads and everything else.
How the hell do you balance this?
Dude, I don't think there's really like a good balance. It's just, honestly, it's you wake up, you get the schedule going, especially the day before, and then you just set out to do as much as you can within that time period. And if I'm working that day, then sometimes I'll have some hours, a few hours here, a few hours there, where I can put into the business, and then I may be running calls and someone may call me, but I'll put that on, hold for a minute, run some calls, and then get back to them when I get back to the station.
And so how much downtime do you realistically have when you're on shift?
So, I mean, it varies, dude. You can go to a station and run, 30 to 35 calls a day, which is massive. Like, that's super busy. I have yet to be consistently at one of those stations. Usually I'm at a station like right now, I run 8 to 10 calls a shift, which isn't bad. So I would say at that station, we have, probably 3 to 4 hours of downtime during the day. Sometimes we're running calls, those take like 20 to 30 minutes. And then depending on if it's a fire or not, those take, fires usually take 2 to 3 hours. And then I get back to it when I get back to the station.
And then you're sitting around.
Yeah, I mean, sitting around, we do training, we do, a bunch of other stuff in between running calls. And then obviously some bystander will come by just and say what's up to us, some citizen at the station. So that pulls us away from, maybe working out or something. We work out at the station. So it's all the workday flow in between running calls and everything else. So it's not too bad. There's not, it's not like I would go 3-4 days without getting back to someone that calls me about real estate.
Okay. What did you get your degree in?
I did business management. I was I was at community college doing all my stuff for fire. And then from there, I was like, I got to get out of that and move to, just get out of that and go to a Cal State in the state. So I was like, I'll do political science, knowing I'm going to change it to business. And then I went to business. And then as soon as I got out of Long Beach, I'm like, dude, okay, well, I'm not going to go take this degree and go get, work as a fireman and go work, 40 hours for some corporate job. So what can I do that would be flexible enough that I could do at the station, and then at the same time build something as I'm doing it? Because I mean, to tell you the truth, like going to Cal State Long Beach and learning that stuff, I don't think that I really developed any type of skills like business wise. I only developed the ability to talk more, to, to do group activities, to have, better relationships. So that did help me in certain skills.
That is still worth something.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, talking about business, did it really teach me anything? No, because looking at business now versus like what I learned then, nothing would be anything that would be applicable. So going to Long Beach State, once I got out of it, I was like, okay, well, let's start something. And then it was, let's buy some rentals, bought some rentals. And okay, what can I do as another flow outside of firefighting? And I got my license. And that was like, kind of like, okay, well, now I got my license. What do I do? And people go to the direction of wholesaling. People go to the direction of, being an agent. And my prerogative is there's always got to be some type of like activity to produce the income that you want to get, some type of passive income. So
yes,
if that's 2 or 3, I know that, it's like 7 different income streams that a millionaire has or whatever that is.
Once they're a millionaire though, I think that's a piece of shit. Right?
Yeah.
Like
No,
you got to focus.
Yeah, no, you got to focus. So, and I know everybody's probably like, dude, you got a lot of things going on, but the 2 main focuses of me is firefighting. And then every single day I'm off outside of, spending time with my wife is dedicated to real estate, to build that real estate team and to do real estate agent activities versus, okay, hey, and that's one thing that I get, and there's a lot of people that get tripped up on is, looking at one thing, like for instance, wholesaling. Okay, dude, wholesaling, dude, that guy got 70 grand on the property. I just heard about some guy the other day that wholesale something for 70 grand. I'm like, that's a good solid, like, piece of deal. So,
yeah.
But at the same time, like if you're, every 6 months, you're like wholesaling's, that's legit. Okay. And then after that, I'm going to be an agent because that agent just sold a $2 million house and he's going to get $40,000 on a commission. And then if you go to, okay, after that guy flipped a house and made 120K, you're going to spread yourself way too thin. And then after 5 to 10 years, you're going to look back and say, dude, there's a lot of things that I learned, but at the same time, if I stuck to one thing and made that one thing mine, I would be way more successful than jumping around at 18 different things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't develop any skills, dude. Like you'll go and like you dabble enough to do something, but you don't develop a skill to be deadly.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, it's, jack of all trades, master of none. That's 100% accurate because if you're sitting there, you look at like a general practitioner, when you go into the doctor, like they always have to refer you to a specialist. And that's how I look at real estate is like, dude, if you come into a real estate office and you start asking about investment properties, vast majority of agents are not going to be talking about investment properties. They're going to be talking about, hey, you can buy this house for, 500,000. Here you go. But there's no focus on like, and that's why a lot of people have those issues. If you go to BiggerPockets, a lot of people have those issues where it's like, dude, I found an agent, dude was not on, or, girl was not on the side of like me looking. They had no idea what numbers were. They didn't know what to look at when they were looking at the property and all those other things when they're actually, getting to the point on buying it as a, rental or buying it as a flip and stuff like that. So those things, it takes a little while to find because it's a smaller select few that get into real estate and be an agent and invest or vice versa,
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's it called? My friend Ryan Dossie posted, and he's a guy who has a lot going on. It's like you should not really diversify until you make one thing produce a lot of money. And then that thing that's producing you a lot of money goes and that money works for you. It's not like you're building 4 businesses at the same time because it doesn't really work that way. You got to get the cash coming in because, again, we're building all these bridges and then nothing is really bringing us a significant amount of cash to be lethal and actually take a step forward into something that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, just like he said, I mean, super valuable is, and it's tough, dude, especially, especially with social media and stuff like that, and like so many other people talking. I mean, you can go on, any forum, anything else online, and you see 18 different things going on, or, a Facebook group, and, people have this going on or that going on. And it's hard to pin down like one thing that you're going to be super passionate about or stick with, and Andy Frisella, he always talks about, just sticking with something for, he's been with it for like 17, 20 years, or like 22, 23 years now. Like, dude, I mean, it takes that long to build something that big. Some people, make like, Gymshark, the clothing company, and they're a billionaire, but that's a very, very small select few. But you see it all of a sudden highlighted online. And you're like, okay, well, let's just jump into this, and I'm going to be that next dude, and I'm going to make that happen. But isn't going to be the case. So you're going to need to really focus on one thing and make that one thing the best.
And do the hard work, I think, is one. Most people don't want to do the hard work, or they don't know what their unique ability is to make the hard work not hard. Like, it's just what you do. Right? Yeah. You're an extrovert, and so like you like talking to people, so you obviously delegate all the other things, and you're still working your ass off, but it's not as hard to you anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's another challenge of a lot of people is delegation. Like, I still have times where it's, tough to delegate something versus like just doing it, because you're like, the thought process is, dude, it will take me 2 minutes to do this, and it's going to take me 15 minutes to explain someone to do it like the way I want it. But at the same time, you got to look at it as like, if I delegate it and I spend that 15 minutes, the next time I need to go do it, they're going to do it for me.
Exactly. So, just send them the message. Just send, hey, go get this done. I still struggle with it. Yeah. I'm an awful delegator, even though we have people, that's our job. But then like you just hold on to stuff because you don't have the trust. That's one thing I have to develop.
Yeah. I'm still, dude, I'm definitely one that's still developing that as well.
So how, and we'll go right into, I wanted to know about how you're building out your team while doing this. Where'd you find the people to build out your real estate team?
So I've had an assistant full time for a couple years now, and she does like the vast majority of pretty much all the paperwork, sends in offers, all that type of stuff. I'm meeting with clients, and then I have other agents that for instance, if I'm with another client or working, those agents can come in and they'll get a portion of the deal if they show, 3, 4, or 10 homes to some clients, and then she does all the paperwork. But going back to hiring her, it was, I ended up hiring her off Indeed. But I've tried Indeed before multiple times, and it was like, dude, it was a dud, because I interviewed 5 to 10 people. And the thing is I put parameters into place to even get to that interview, where it was like, hey, email me at this date, at this time. Also send me a resume at the same time, and then we'll set up a phone call. So, it goes through like 100 people, applying. Then all of a sudden it dwindles down to like 15, if that. And then from there, getting into the interviews, it's like 3 to 4. And so the assistant I had was going off. She had a baby, and she went off for like 9 months. And I had to go hire somebody else, and it was a struggle. I mean, luckily I found her initially, but it was a struggle to the point that it was like, okay, well, I mean, it doesn't even make sense really to like hire most of these people that go into it. And really what you need to put into place is, for one, some parameters on what you're looking for. And 2, the biggest thing would be to set up expectations, because a lot of people, the expectations are like, hey, just show up for this interview. That's it. So
well, a lot of people don't even know what they're hiring for, right? They don't even have a list of things that they want delegated. And to where I was talking to a dude yesterday, and it's like, well, I need to hire on someone because I'm so busy. And then I like took him through the thought process and didn't even know what he wanted them to do. He was just like, I'm busy, so I'm hiring somebody. Right? Like, have that laid out for them, for at least when they get to you, they're on their feet running, and you have those systems in place. So it's less time and money you're spending into that person.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think systems, going back to, you and I talking about delegation, I think systems for sure for me are still, I'm still working on those and ironing those out, making sure like, we're using the best tools, Slack, Asani, those types of things to make sure it's as seamless as possible. And sometimes you can get caught in the weeds in there too. It's just like emails and everything else. It's like, dude, I already said this like 18 times. Why am I saying it again? And that's just for one, a learning curve, and then in growing too. So, going back to the team, have her, and then also, a buyer's agent too, just because, the more deals we're getting, the more ability and flexibility that I'll need because I'll be on appointments and everything else. And that's, that was networking to build that team with the extra buyer's agent, is someone I knew through like this networking group said like, hey, this guy has his license. He's looking to go somewhere else. And then I interviewed him. He came on board. He's been good. He does like a south part of Orange County. I'm in Orange County. And then he does north part of San Diego.
Okay. Wow. And do you wholesale at all?
So I wholesale, yeah. And that's that. So what comes up with that is like, and going back to, specifying on one thing, I have some radio ads that I do, and they talk about, and it's usually what comes forth is like, in the ad, it talks about, buying the house and that guarantee. And then when I sit down with them, it's, hey, these are the options of, I can buy this house for $450, or we can sell it for $540. And, depending on the area and everything else, but there's got to be margins with wholesaling, as everybody knows. So, once you give them that, it's kind of the awe factor where it's like, you can, especially in this market. And I know you probably experience this, like when you sit down or you talk to someone and they're like, yeah, I want to sell my house. Okay, cool. Well, we can give you, $450. And they're like, what? I mean, someone down the street just sold their place, on the market for almost 600. And it's like, well, your house doesn't look that good. Like, do you want to put some time and effort into it? Those are the things and those are the conversations I have. So yeah, I'll sit down with them. And then sometimes people take that, easy scapegoat where it's like, hey, I got this house. It was deeded to me. And now I want to, get it off my chest. I got to get it out, and I don't really care how much it goes for. And I give them both options because, being licensed and wholesalers, not being licensed, it's a little different story, but being licensed is, I at least have to give them the option of like, hey, you can easily sell it on market for this much, just to give you a heads up. Because later down the road, if they came back and said, hey, my brother,
I wasn't a fiduciary or whatever.
Yeah. And I have, there's a guy that works in my office. He's actually like, the general manager. He actually went into a deal where the mom was selling, and then the son got involved where he was like, oh, well, Mom, you can sell this for way more, which ultimately they had a, binding agreement. They ended up, buying it for what it was agreed upon. But, family members can get involved too, where they're starting to dictate what's going on. You know what I mean? So yeah, we do find some wholesale deals. It's harder today, or at least like, with people selling as good as it is right now, it's, you got to find those people super motivated, or people that are getting a bunch of properties that are in a trust, just, planning. I'm working on, a huge deal right now with a guy that's getting a lot of properties from, his dad. So those things do happen.
So how do those conversations go as you're navigating that? Right. Cause that was one reason I never, ever wanted to be a real estate agent. I was like, I don't want any of the liability, and I don't ever even want to have someone try and come back at me because we decided to wholesale it instead of list it.
Yeah. I mean, dude, for me, I've always been like, upfront as possible, even to a fault where it's like, why'd you tell them that? And it's like, well, dude, if I don't disclose everything, and it's not, and it's just honestly my personality. Like if I don't tell you everything that's going on, at least what I know, then I'm going to leave knowing that like, I didn't tell him something, or we're having the conversation right now and I'm not telling you something. And it's like, you can tell. You're like, well, he wasn't being that genuine. So, and for me, like, dude, it's night and day. Like if I'm telling you something that's true versus something that's false, like you can read it. You're like, dude, this guy's lying for sure. So for me, it's like, I know we can sell this for, and I bring up that example again is because that actually happened to me. I said, hey, dude, we can buy it for $540, or sorry, 450, or we can sell for 540. Dude, they listed it with another agent. I lost it. They listed it for, and dude, the house was rough, and they listed it for like 590 and got like, I think they got like 600 grand for it. So, which is crazy, dude. And it's something like, well, dude, how'd they do that? How were you that far off? But it was like, they did, like, when I saw the pictures, when I went in there, it was like one of them, like, it smelled like dog. There was no light going on. And you had like a bathroom that was like ripped out, like the wall was ripped out and stuff like that. So, there was a lot of things that need to be done to that house, and they did the vast majority of them. And they were telling me like, hey, yeah, we will literally like not do much at all before we list it. Just waiting for him to come back. Oh, he's almost back.
There
What up?
Man, our Wi-Fi just went out.
Oh, really?
So we were talking about the house to where they fucking sold it for 600,000. You offered them 450.
Yeah. So so I work with quite a few investors, and my initial spread, like when I look at properties, is like a 150 spread. And so
when you say 150 spread, is that like 150 profit that you're going to make, or you want to just have 150 between, like, that you can work with?
Yeah, 150 that I can work with. So Orange County, our average price it's bumped. It used to be like 689, and now it's like 739 or something. So that's our average price point. So let's go off an easy number of 500K. So if I'm looking at a property that's 500K, I'm looking to get it for like 350. And that's just, if I look at the property, I'm like, dude, 350 all day. Okay, cool. Now we can have the conversation. But especially these days, a lot of the conversation is like, okay, you can get it for 500, but we want to sell it at like, our number is like 475. And it's like, well, we can't do anything then. Like, you might as well list it on the market at 500 and just see if you can get it. Because if not, then, it's not going to make anybody money. And ultimately the wholesaler is going to lose, and the rehabber is going to lose too. And take myself out of it. So take myself out of it as being a wholesaler, or, selling the property to somebody else for a profit. As a rehabber, you're still looking for like at least 125 margin. And that's in a market of, a super competitive market where, you're using a contractor that you use a lot, and they're going to give you a better deal than they are someone down the street that's just doing like a quick kitchen remodel, So, and you don't get a lot of that. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to get it. And I've seen a lot of deals. There's a lot of bigger wholesalers around us that, are selling things for a crazy amount of money, and they're getting it. It makes no sense. So you really got to get down and be tight with your numbers, because you can easily get, and that's one of those things that they talk about, take the emotions out of it, and having that conversation with yourself and be like, is this worth it? Does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, then just keep moving.
Are you doing anything to actively build your buyers list? Because I think wholesaling now has become more about buyers than really sellers. Because like when you have these big companies, they can just offload stuff, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You sold it to who for how much? Like, oh yeah, man.
Yeah, so we get a decent amount of calls of just so with the ads that we do on radio, we do some mailers too, and I know that that's going towards the person selling, but we
Mhm.
also get quite a few calls of buyers from the radio ads. So like they'll call and
Okay.
they'll be like, "Hey, I got 1.5 million. I'm new to the area and I would love to invest with you or invest on some deals. We'll send you, a full portfolio." And then what I do is I'll hit up. So that's one thing to do is to get on their list of the people that are advertising in your area. And then going back to building other buyers is there's been some people that I've actually reached out to that are, working for these bigger firms. And I'm like, hey, if I have something, can I send it your way? Especially with some of the deals that we've gotten, is there's still enough spread where it's like, I'll make 10 and then they'll make 10 and then, they can wholesale it. Most of these bigger firms are making, 15 to 50 grand on each wholesale assignment. But, yeah, I reach out to the bigger firms because there's quite a few people. And then I've developed some relationships with some guys that I actually have left those areas and they're at either smaller firms that are off on their own. And I've been able to build those relationships too. And then looking at tax records, being able to see like who has, 15 properties in their name or who's like doing deals and stuff like that. So pulling those tax records are, super beneficial and reaching out to them and just, and then also social media. There's a couple of guys that I follow that, I'll hit up and say, hey, we have 123 Main Street. It's coming. Would you be interested?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the active steps that I'm taking. And I feel like that passive step of getting some phone calls off the radio ads is still fairly active because we still have advertising dollars going into it and those people are still calling us off it.
Oh yeah. How much credibility does the radio ad bring you when you're having these conversations?
So it brings a lot more versus like just a mailer because, you can have 15 mailers sitting on someone's couch as you walk in. And then once you get a radio ad, especially like if you align yourself with certain radio stations, depending on the radio station, like, I actually, speaking of this, I'm working with some buyers that they're going to buy a new build and it's like a year out from being finished, but they reached out to me yesterday because they heard me on a radio ad and I didn't meet them through the radio ad. I met them through a lender that, I work with quite a bit. And they were like, oh, hey, we heard you on the radio, and they started talking about the radio ads and stuff like that. But it builds a lot more credibility. And there's a couple of investors that I work with quite a bit. One developer down in Orange County that, he's like, dude, I hear you on the radio like 3 times a day, all the time. So it's like, it builds the credibility and then also it gets those people to remember you on, another level than it would if you have a mailer. So, and here's the thing, dude, is like, sometimes you'll, like for instance, last month on radio calls, it was pretty slow to tell you the truth, but I'll have months where it's like, I'm only on 2 stations, but I'll have 90 to 100 calls of, people ready to do something. So it just really depends on the day and the flow and the month and stuff like that. Like leading up to, like, for instance, beginning of the year, there's really nothing. Then February was pretty, picked up pretty good. And then like right around just probably you experienced too, but right around the election, it was like nothing. No one was doing anything. Granted, not too many people were doing much because they were so focused in on that, but you could really tell from the radio ads for sure.
Where'd you even want to start doing radio? What made you think about, oh, I'm gonna do radio ads?
Dude, there's this guy that's he's in Texas somewhere. Chris Arnold. He does.
Oh, I know that guy.
Yeah. So he has like a little kind of like, I guess, like class or something. So I signed up for the class and then I started doing that. And then it was like, 1 + 2 = 3. You can easily like, put it together, and I put it together. And then now I'm just on my own, just doing it. And, I negotiate every 6 months or year with the radio station, but there's the vast majority of like, for instance, agents and stuff like that don't do much radio at all, if any. And you get a lot of good active, sellers and buyers out of radio, because, not too many people are doing. Granted, it is a lot more money. So you got to be willing to, put out that cash to do it. And it's, unless you're doing, 5 to 10,000 mailers a month, depending on how much flow you're doing of that. But, it is going to be more money than mailers if you're only putting like 1,000 mailers out a month.
I mean, but like if you're doing 1,000 mailers a month, you're really just getting started at a point, like to where a lot of people are, when you get to somewhat of a scale and you have a little bit of funds, it's still, I feel like it's better inbound with the radio than mailers. Especially in your market.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
You're going to have a bunch of just mailers sitting on a table, and then they call you off a radio ad. And our demographic does still listen to the radio.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I kind of warned, the listeners is like, it, depending on what market you're in, and dude, if you're in like in New York or you're in LA or something like that, like it's not cheap. It's not, it's pretty expensive to get into, to actually get on the radio. And that's not even talking about like how much it would be to get on television. I know there's some guys that do television. Like that's to the point where like, okay, hey dude, I'm spending a lot of money doing this. So you got to be precise. You got to make sure that the copy is good. You got to make sure that you're getting phone calls and you're analyzing every month. Cause if not, you got to switch stations, or you got to put on pause, and you got to reevaluate, just like anything, just, making sure that the data is working. But then again, going back to what you just said, like, 500 to 1,000 mailers a month, is for somebody that's just starting out, it's like, man, that's a lot of money. But at the same time, like you got to consistently do that for 6 months to a year, just to get,
bro.
Yeah. Just to get like, and it depends on like, dude, if, it's like a little bedroom community, sometimes, you get people that are like, that, what is that silver tsunami? You get like a lot more people that are in that community that are older, and they read a lot more mail. But yeah, you got to do it for a long time. And then just know that you want to do this for a long time, because if not, you're ultimately going to like sit there and be like, yeah, man, it's not working. I'm out. And then like, maybe you're 7 months in and you haven't got a phone call, but then all of a sudden, if you did it for 8 months and you beat out that next guy, you're ultimately going to win, or win one deal that's going to pay for the next 6 to 10 months of your mailers. And then you find that 3 to 4 deals. You got to be consistent. And a lot of people, and I guess that's one other thing that you go into real estate, thinking and seeing is like yourself, dude, like wholesaling, like being, dominating, and then, posting it or something like that, or just talking to someone and they're like, dude, he's crushing it. But then know that it's going to be a while, because a lot of those people are like, okay, well, I can do that in 3 months. I can wait 3 months to get paid. And it's like, dude, it's not going to, your paycheck ain't coming for a year. You know what I mean?
And you have all those bills building up as you're waiting for that paycheck, to where a lot of people don't understand, like you're still paying a nut every month. And then that deal that comes in, you're not really making X amount of money. You have to back pay all that stuff. And then I personally front pay, like a lot of our subscriptions and stuff, just get a deal. Okay, how much money do we need to stay alive, and just pay it all out. And then after that, I just feel more secure. Yeah. And I'm not stressing about, oh man, do we have enough money to make this payment? Do we have enough money to make this payment?
Yeah. And that's one thing, going back to building a team, and then being, just being a business owner in general is taking the time to make sure that, you're going to be in it for the long haul. Then also putting in those systems and the strategies into place to be successful and be effective, and you got to, sometimes, you spend 8 months and you're like, okay, well, I got 3 phone calls that actually turned out to a deal. Now I got to tweak it, and I want to get, 5 phone calls or whatever that may be that are going to turn out to a deal. But you got to always test, split test if you can, stuff like that, especially on PPC and everything else. But as much as you can do to get to a point where like, okay, well, I can set this every month and put myself in a position where like I can go do something else marketing wise, and then start focusing on that. So now I'm 2 or 3 fold versus like just being that one single, advertisement space, and ultimately only getting a few deals, every 90 to 120 days.
Yeah. Did your business degree help you with budgeting at all? Like,
No,
did it help
dude,
you with nothing?
I was terrible in accounting. I was terrible in you name it, like stats, terrible. I mean, I know stats is like business calc. I was so pissed I had to take that. And then econ, dude, you go down the list. I actually had this I had this professor, and he was like, hey, I know, so I have an uncle. He went to Claremont Colleges, which is a really good school, like around us. And he's worked for a long time. He's retired now, but he worked for a very successful company. And he actually saw him speak one time at the Claremont Colleges. So I come in, right, and he's like, oh, dude, he's like reading down the roster, and he's like, Mckernan. He was like, do you have an uncle? Or not an uncle, but do you know so and so? And I'm like, yeah, that's my uncle. And he's like, yeah, right. And then he was like, and then later he asked me again. I was like, yeah, it is. So like the expectations were like so much higher. And then like he saw like my first test score, and he was like, essentially like, I knew I could see it on his face. And then like how he treated me after that, he's like, you're not your uncle. And I'm like, dude, yeah, because this class sucks. Like, I don't want to be in this class. And you're a professor, you suck as a professor. And I'm not even that good at school. I'm to tell you the truth. So it was just funny, dude. It's no, dude, to answer your question, no. I just, who taught me budgeting was, funny enough, was Dave Ramsey. Like, just listening to him, his podcast for like literally a couple of years, like driving to and from work or to and from appointments. Like, he is, if you want to learn how to like really tighten up a budget, it doesn't matter if it's like in business or in life. He's really like, the guy to go to and really like tighten down on expenses.
How do you feel about Dave Ramsey now? I don't agree with anything that he preaches once you get to a certain point, because he makes all of his money by telling people what to do, not by running a business.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna say this, dude. I've seen some people post on like BiggerPockets and stuff, like, well, he filed for bankruptcy and stuff like that, and I don't know like what his net worth is. Yeah, this was a long time ago. Not now. No. Like back when he was, so like when he was like 26, 27, like I've heard like his whole story. I've read some books of his and stuff like that. But like, that's how he got into what he's doing now. Like, he was like 26 or 27. He built up a real estate, like, he was an agent because his mom was an agent. And then ultimately he would buy rental properties. And then there was basically, I don't know what president it was, but they basically said like, hey, we're going to call these notes. Well, they called all these notes that he had, like, of everybody across the United States, and not just Dave Ramsey, but they called a lot of notes due. And he basically got down to the point, like where he had to sell all his stuff. He was able to sell pretty much all of it to like 75,000, and he had to file for bankruptcy. And that was like 26 or 28. I don't know how old he was then. And then he started the company he has now, Ramsey Solutions, when he was like 32. And it was like, because he went through that whole process, he's like, okay, well, your income obviously is huge, but at the same time, like, if you save and you don't have debt, and that's where the no debt, came from, was that experience. So, I mean, going back to what your question was, like, do I listen to him now? No. However, dude, I don't know. His business is probably doing a couple $100 million, like, easy. So like, he did build a great business. So you can't say like, well, he's not really a solid business guy. But I agree. Like, there's some fundamentals if you're in real estate that don't really match up to, if you want to grow and you want to be big in real estate, that really match up. So do I follow his stuff now? No. Did it put us in a, good position to be really, to be within, the ability to actually build a business and stuff like that? Yeah. Like, my wife and I were able to pay off like a ton of student loans and ton of debt and stuff like that, because we had the ability to see like what would be better is either paid off now or like, keep it keep it there and then pay it off in 20, 30 years. So he did show us that. I will say that. But do I agree with a lot of stuff now? No, not really.
I mean, he is an amazing businessman, right? But like, as far as getting into real estate, telling someone like, because most people are broke when they get into it, and telling them not to take on any debt is really, really hard when they have no education, no way to do things like that. Just doesn't make any sense. But I could see why you'd be fearful of not taking on debt if the president calls all your notes. So I don't trust him.
Yeah. No. I mean, and that was a circumstance. I don't know what year it was or anything like that, late 80s, early 90s. And it was a bad time for real estate. So not saying that that's going to happen again, but I know that, it wasn't just him that felt that, crunch and had to, get rid of a lot of stuff. I know that, real estate was bad then anyways, but to actually, focus on that and say like, hey, I'm not going to have any debt or anything like that, going forward I'm not sure would be the right act if you want to get into it, unless you're, crushing in something else. You're in some type of business where you're making, a significant amount of money and you can just buy cash. But there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of investors that I work with that, they're in their mid 50s now, and they're at the point where now they're paying off their properties. So they have full cash flow. But before they had notes for 25, 30 years on them. So
he'll get you to where you want to be if you're in debt. I 100% believe that. Like if you are just getting started, you need to get your budgets right, and you do need to get out of debt, he's the guy to go to. Like he'll get you in the right spot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he will. He'll line you out to the point where like, okay, hey, you and your wife or your spouse, whoever it is in your family, can be in a position to, take that income that you guys are getting, the dual or single income, and then produce that income and then put it into something else. So that's kind of how we focused on it, was like, hey, let's do this. And then at a point, once we finish that off, then we can take our money and all income that we have above and beyond our living expenses, we can move that into a passive place. So, and that's really what our strategy is now, is like, everything that we have that's above and beyond what our expenses are just moved into the passive income. And that's the biggest thing, is like taking that in. And that's why I said earlier, like the flows that you get, whatever that is, like if it's one or two things, if you have a dual income house or, single income house and you're doing some, some type of side hustle and you're taking whatever that extra income is, save that up and then invest it. If you can invest it in your state, like, you're living in New York or you're living in California like us. Yeah. Like, and you can't do it here, do it somewhere else. I mean, there's guys, super successful doing it, David Green, stuff like that. So there are people that are, successful building teams, being able to do it. And there's, bigger investors that do it as well. However, I mean, just like me, I don't like going out of state. That's, just my prerogative, but, you can go out of state easy too and stay in state.
I want to take it back to college. Do you wish you would have never gone? Are you happy you went? How do you feel about
it? Dude, I told my wife a long time ago, I was like, dude, if someone offered me like $100,000 for my degree, I'd give it to them. I mean, I cash flowed college when I went, and it was a Cal State school, which was, it wasn't that expensive. Right now, I think it's a lot more, but, being a Cal State versus like a private school or something like that, it's, a fraction of the price. I would say, I would probably get into real estate sooner, but serendipitous, like how we got into it. Like me and a buddy were like, hey, we should buy a place in Orange County. And then we looked at the numbers and we're like, well, it doesn't make sense. Like once we moved out of it, like we got married and stuff like that. And we moved on from that place. Like the numbers didn't work because even at the time, it was 2013. Even at the time, we're like, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. But we end up going like, okay, well, hey, we know another area. It's where we grew up. Let's go ahead and invest in that area. And then ultimately transitioned and just like pushed into that area. And we still have one of the rentals that we bought. We should have kept the other one, but we still have one of the rentals that we bought. And it's, the lady's been in there for almost 10 years, and no problems. We had like a huge leak last year, but insurance covered it. So I would want to, get into real estate sooner, but at the same time, like, it happened when it happened. Like, I got out of, I finished college, and then I was like, hey, dude, got some money. Let's go invest in real estate. Cause I heard, funny enough, dude, I heard BiggerPockets, like, when they first came out, or at least their podcast. And I was like, dude, this seems like a good option to go. And then ultimately, dude, that was history. And that got me, that was the catalyst that got me to get my license, to, build a team, to, buy more rentals.
Are you pretty active on BiggerPockets?
Dude, I am now. For a couple of years, I wasn't. Actually, for a few years, I wasn't. It goes back to, like, just focusing on, doing some stuff, like making sure that the business was running well. And I wasn't as active, but I started to become more active. And it's gotten, because I'm an agent, so it's gotten my name out more. Like, people have hit me up on there. So that's huge. I will say, like, so I used to post, like, quite a bit. This was a few years ago. And then I stopped, like, nothing. And then all of a sudden, I started posting again. I try to post like once a day, try to help,
Okay.
Yeah, throw myself into like a forum. And then I post quite a bit of blogs on there, and then I'll, put them on my website. But they, at least for them, they have a good algorithm where, like, it spits out like an agent in your area, like when you type it in to the search bar. And so you can see agents within your area, and, all pop up, and people will message me and say, hey, I see you're an agent in my area. Can we have a quick conversation? So I've had quite a few conversations, and that's made me, even more active on the site, just because I'm like, well, if my name is on radio ads, if my name is, doing this other marketing, and then also at the same time, I'm posting once a day that takes me like literally 10 minutes to 20 minutes, then I'll do that as well. And that will potentially bring me in some more business and develop other relationships.
Well, and brand the hell out of you, right?
Yeah.
Like, now you're branded. I haven't really gone on there in a long time. BiggerPockets is how I got into real estate too, though.
Yeah.
They hate wholesalers, and they hate cold calling. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do on this site?
Well, I think, dude, for you, I mean, you've obviously built, a couple of different businesses. I think for you would be, huge into providing value to people in that, like, hey, dude, I do this call center, or I do wholesaling, like, and you can bring in like what you've learned from it. And it doesn't even have to be like, hey, dude, I think, and this is how wholesalers get bad name. Like, you go to and just like you've probably heard before, but you go, and all of a sudden, I mean, there's bigger firms. I'm not going to say any names, but there's bigger firms that, like, they prey on people that are brand new. And like a lot of those people that are brand new, like, are doing deals that don't even make sense. And that's why you and I were like, dude, how is that a deal? And so I think that's how wholesalers get a bad name, is because ultimately that house should go to the market, but they're just selling it to, that seller is like, dude, we can sell this easily. And they do. And it's unfortunate. And sometimes people are buying it for a rental property, and that's why they're making the money. Or, I heard the other day, like, someone was, buying it because they just needed to basically get their guy's business, like their contractor business. So, but going back to, what you mentioned, like not posting as much, dude, I think it would be huge for you, because you can just add value, and then people are going to look up, Stratton, like, hey, we need, some advice in the Central Valley.
Right. And then they come to you, and then it's just more business.
Yeah. It's building a relationship too. Like, that person may, be on your team one day.
Exactly. What does your rental portfolio look like now? And how are you cash flowing in these freaking markets, dude?
So let's see. We have 4 units, and then, and it's all in California. We're looking to buy another one right now. That's going to be a duplex, and then we're shooting to buy 4 more this year. So a total of 5 duplexes this year in California. I'm big on the ADU craze. And I know
Okay.
that's just focused on California specifically, and there's some other states that are actually like putting it in like
Will you
actually
define AU for the listeners?
Yeah. It's accessory dwelling unit, and that's essentially mother-in-law's quarters, and casita, if in certain areas people call it those two. So, or a granny flat. So it's basically an extra unit on the property. And what they did in California, and I say they, is legislation. They changed back in 2017. You could build an ADU on your property. Well, now it changed in 2020, the beginning of 2020, where you can actually take that ADU. It used to be, it was only on primary residence. Now it's on any investment property. Doesn't matter if it's multifamily or single family residence or lot. And they used to say like, you need to have this much lot coverage. You need to have setbacks, which is basically between where that ADU starts and the property line. All these other regulations that they had within the law, and they basically took it all out. Hey, you have to put more parking once you convert a garage, all this stuff. Well, in California, you build, I mean, this, like, yeah, you can't build anywhere. Like, it's like, you can't build anywhere at all because it's so stacked, especially in like LA County is huge. The Bay Area is huge for ADUs. It's because they can't build, a 5-story house, but you can build an extra, unit and cash flow. And a lot of people do short-term rentals. There's some, make sure that the guidelines with that. It's got to be on, basically a primary if you're doing short-term rental.
Is that how it is in Orange County? For the short-term rentals? Like it has to be a primary?
LA County for sure. So LA County is like, you actually have to do, for instance, for LA County, it has to be and LA City, it has to be your primary. And you either have to do the front house or the back house is the short-term rental. And then you have to live in one or the other. So they're really cracking down on that. But I mean, make sure that your area, and then also make sure, what the city's doing. The cities basically are handcuffed on what the state has provided. So the state has basically said like, hey, you're going to do this, and you can't really change much of it. But before, they said in 2017, when they actually put this into law, they said you can do this, but you can make your own changes, whatever you want to do. Well, the cities basically put it to the test, and a lot of people couldn't even do anything, especially in Orange County, especially other cities that, specifically, cities don't want a duplex essentially on a single family because it was never zoned that. And then now, if it's your primary, you can build a third unit, which is a junior ADU, up to 500 square feet, which is attached to the main house. So if you have, let's say you had a 10,000 square foot lot, you had a detached garage that was facing an alley, you can convert that garage. And then you can also, if there's a garage that's attached to the front house, you can convert that as well up to 500 square feet. So now you have essentially a triplex on the property, and then you could rent it out. I'm not huge into junior ADUs. Like I haven't done any of that. I got a buddy just because, so for me, when I go rent something, like if I was in the renter's shoes, like I would rather have some separation. And some people are like, dude, I don't care, cash flow. Which if you go to like Culver City, which is down in LA, which is really nice. If you go to these other parts, like parts of Orange County, like I know a renter has higher expectations and higher standards. So like they may say like, dude, I ain't renting that, or I'm not going to rent it for like 1,700. I'm only going to rent it for 1,200, and your numbers are off 1,700. So, so you want to make sure, like for me, like I would rather have separation. So like I'm looking for something that's a bigger lot, and it's a detached garage, hopefully facing an alley. You can separate the lot, and then once you separate it, then it's like property A versus property B, they don't talk to each other. And if they do, it's because they got, mail mixed up or something like that. Mm-hmm. Those are the only times. So that's how I look at it, versus like, if you're looking at it as, I just want to stack as many people as I can in this property, which there's people that do that too. They can do the junior ADU thing. I just don't do it, just because it's got to be it's got to be the primary residence, and, you're going to have people on top of each other.
I like the ADU thing. Utah's big with the mother-in-law suites.
Okay.
We go back and forth to Utah a lot. We're there like 6 months out of the year.
Oh,
And when
okay.
I grew up, everyone had a mother-in-law suite. But then like nobody, like in Utah, it's different. Every city has a different jurisdiction about Airbnb rules. And there's,
Yeah.
for the greater Salt Lake area, there's probably 40 cities. And just like the valley. And so you can have one on this street and you can't have one on the other street or else you'll get dinged. We had one in St. George, Utah, and they said they were going to make us felons if we kept it online.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It was intense.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a huge short-term rental Airbnb person. I know that, I think, if you and I were talking 5 to 7 years down the road, I think the landscape's going to be a lot different. I think there's going to be a lot of other cities. I mean, there's cities that are local to us that you can't even do an Airbnb anymore. Like there's short-term rental, like vouchers essentially for the house. And like they've given out as many as they can or as many as they want, and they shut it off. And like, it's because the amount of money that comes into those cities from people that are very, very wealthy that don't want Airbnbs have like shut it down. And and there's other areas like, I mean, if you're going to go short-term rental, I would go, a smaller area that's more like a county pocket and it has like a huge attraction, like a park, like a national park or, a big lake or something like that. So those areas. Yeah.
That's one of like the best Airbnb markets in the country.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because only reason people come here is because they have to, or they're going to Yosemite, right? Like you're not going to Fresno for anything besides work and you got to see family.
Yeah.
So they just get a bunch of people coming in all the time.
Yeah, I could see that. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. So, but going back to your question, like that's how we're cash flowing is the ADU model. I think a lot more people are going to it. The one thing is just be cognizant. If you start dabbling in ADU and you're in California, the appraisal values are tough. You got to make sure like, one that we're doing right now, we have the permits into the city and it usually takes like 6 months to get them, they're supposed to do it less. So they're supposed to do it within 60 days. That came out in 2020. It usually doesn't happen. It's usually like 120 days. And then it takes about 2 months to build. And that's if they're moving. So, but going back to the appraisal, you got to have like some type of, back unit that was an ADU that was sold within your area. If not, you're going to have some problems doing an appraisal and getting the value, so if you're doing the BRRRR strategy. So that's one thing, like, on one of them, we're doing the BRRRR strategy and that's what we're looking at is actually doing, the BRRRR strategy. And we have some sales in the area that could actually support the comps that we're looking at. So that's huge.
What happens if you don't? Are you just out of luck? I was like, all right, sorry, bud.
Yeah, I mean, so you would pretty much be out of luck, or you can actually challenge it and say like, hey, I don't believe that this is worth 600. I think it's worth 650. So you just got to watch it. You got to make sure that you're, calculated going in those areas, and then at the same time, like, make sure that you're doing all your due diligence. So bring comps with you when you go meet that appraiser, because the appraiser is going to be at your house. So meet that person there, bring the comps, bring, a full spreadsheet of how much you spent on the property. Also bring, if this is something that, was sold or something like that in the area, like your comparables, like see if you can hit up the agent and see how many actual offers were in on that property, because then it shows like how many people like were actually interested in the property. Yeah. And then bring the permits too. The permits are huge because they're going to see like, okay, because that's going to, all that huge packet is going to be stapled with that appraisal, and it's going to justify how much they're giving on that property.
And so, that was gold.
So that's huge to do is make sure you don't just show up. I mean, a lot of people just show up at the property and just be like, okay, do the appraisal, but you got to make sure. Yeah. You got to make sure you're doing your due diligence and you're following up with that appraiser. And if the appraisal doesn't come back, dude, I would challenge it. I would say, no, like, hey, this, and then they'll either have somebody else come back out, or, there's another, there's a website or something. I think it's like equity.com or something. They do appraisals. And it's almost like an algorithm how they do appraisals versus like looking at the comps. And I've heard some people have gotten really good appraisals back from using them versus actually using a a direct lender or a broker or something like that. So, and they'll just evaluate the lot and then what's on the lot. And that's really how they go off of it. And they've gotten, appraisals to actually appraise the place super high comparatively, like what they initially got. So
and what's that called again?
I think it's equity.com. Let me see real quick.
Okay.
I think it's something like that.
You just drop some golden nuggets for people down there.
So yeah, I think it's equity.com. If you go on their website, they'll be able to help you. And then those things for sure, like doing ADUs, you got to be on point. Like, it's not too much stuff. I know it seems like it's, super in depth, but if you just jump onto the state website, you can find the ADU laws that are set into place, and then just hit up the city that you buy in and say like, hey, is this something that, you guys are following, or do you guys have new standards within the city? And then they'll send you the new standards if they have them. If not, most cities right now, we're like a little over a year into the new standards. They don't have any new standards. It's probably going to be another year and a half before those cities actually have standards, unless it's like a super progressive city like, us down here. We have Anaheim, where Disneyland is. They have super progressive city standards. And then, like an LA City or a Culver City or something like that.
Okay. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. We'll tie it up here. Where can people find out more about you? Where can we hear about your podcast?
Yeah, you can check out my podcast on any platform. Just search real estate trends and market updates. And then you can also, you can find me on BiggerPockets. I'm also on Instagram at Peter Mckernan, McKernan, with an extra N at the end. You can check me out those 3 spots.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ron.